So I'm with Geoff Carroll
Yes.
from the Wooden Boat Association, and we've had a good chat about the association itself. But what we haven't covered is that sometimes there are just some very funny things that happen. Is that right, Geoff?
Yes, this is the enjoyment of wooden boats, and people using wooden boats is sometimes the unexpected happens, such as, for instance, we have a member who built a tiny little boat called Green Pea, which was about 6 or 7 feet long,
Right.
tiny little cockle shell, which he took up the Yarra and was nearly run over by a large ship coming up, which sounded its horn and nearly blew him out of the water. He's since lengthened the boat and called it Green Bean by putting a central bit in it, and we're wondering how long it'll be before he lengthens it again, and we've got the green cucumber. So that's one thing. We do have other funny things. Back in the, with my father's boat, we'd always been on the Gippsland Lakes. There are no tides up there.
No.
So very early on, my wife and I took Kibby, the boat, down to Rye for one of our first Rye days with the WBA, pulled it ashore, and because it's the end of February when you have the very low tides, we found it stranded. What happened then was quite a few members of the Wooden Boat Association stayed with us waiting for the tide to come in. By this stage it's nearly 8 o'clock at night, still no sign of the tide, so we all went off and got fish and chips together, had it on the beach, and that started a ritual now that every Rye Day finishes each year with fish and chips on the beach all together,
Yeah.
after we packed up our boats.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it starts on. So you get these funny little human things happening.
Yeah. There was something funny too, wasn't there, about you have a clinker boat, which
Yes.
means that that the planks can dry and separate a little
That's
bit,
right,
so
yes.
they need to be filled. The boat needs
Yes.
to be filled with water.
That's right.
Was
Yes.
there something about you were transporting the boat and it
Oh
was full
yes.
of water?
Back in the late 90s, I borrowed Begonia for our camping trip, and I found when I got her home that the planks had opened up. So I filled her up with water and then headed up towards Bairnsdale, up the Prince's Highway, with this boat with water in the bottom. I couldn't work out why the cars on the freeway kept running up behind me and then suddenly dropping back with their windscreen wipers going crazily. And of course what it was the water was coming out the bottom of the boat and flying up as spray behind it. And so I was giving cars an impromptu
You
wash.
were giving them a spray.
Yes. On the way home. We did have another member who loves building kayaks, and he thought he read some articles on these kayaks that are then covered in linen, so they're foldable and that sort of thing, and he thought, well, using modern materials he might cover it with cling wrap.
Right.
And first time he tried to sail that, it was a disaster because he fell through the bottom, I suppose. The cling wrap certainly didn't keep the water out.
No.
So we have these funny sorts of things. When we did a trip to Nelson, one of our lady members was busily talking to the group on the jetty, didn't realise the boat had moved away and sort of stepped onto the boat as it went and ended up with an impromptu dunking. So
dear.
we have
Not
quite a
injured.
few
Not
things.
injured though.
Yeah, no, and on the same thing, when we got up to Princess Margaret Caves, we tied our boats up. I think I've given you a picture of the boats tied up
Yes,
there
that's right.
on the Glenelg River. We're sitting down to lunch and suddenly there's major consternation at the tables because there was a lovely big tiger snake going across the lawn.
Oh, wow.
We were about to have lunch. So we have all these sort of little quirks and funny things that happen while we're doing it. It's part of the humanity, if you like, of WBA.
I love it. Thank you, Geoff.
Right.